You tried to keep your composure. You tried not to make a noise. You tried not to disturb. You even tried to forget that you felt. But deep down, everything in you was screaming, even in silence. You slept next to him, but you were dying in another invisible bed, because the mattress was the same but the worlds completely distant. You lay down with your body, but your soul had already given up. You covered yourself with the blanket, but the cold came from within. No one saw, not even him. In fact, he was the first to not notice. You turned to the side carefully, so as not to disturb. You held back tears in your throat like someone swallowing a dry scream. You kept your phone in hand late into the night, pretending it was just insomnia. But it was emptiness, it was absence. It was that feeling of being with someone, and yet having no one. Do you realize that now? The number of times you had to suffocate questions, disguise desires, kill legitimate wants for fear of seeming needy. You ceased to exist within the relationship. To avoid being a burden, to prevent causing friction, to maintain a false harmony that only you carried, and little by little, you stopped being you. First, you lost your sparkle, then your voice, then your laughter, and finally, your desire. Not sexual, but existential. The desire to be, to belong, to be seen, felt, touched for real, not with hands, but with the soul. How many times did you think, if I disappeared right now, he wouldn't even notice? And that hurt more than any fight, more than any betrayal, more than any shout, because his absence didn't come with words. It came with the vacant stare, with the mechanical gestures, with the cold presence of someone who is close but isn't. That's what you felt, isn't it? He would come home from work, plug his phone in, flop onto the couch, and you were there, but you weren't, because he didn't see you. He didn't touch you like before. It didn't matter if you were okay, tired, worn out, or hurt. You had to learn to stay quiet. You had to convince yourself that long relationships are like this, but something inside you never accepted that lie. Something in you noticed, even when you tried to deny it. It noticed that your soul was already in emotional coma. It noticed that your words turned into echoes. It noticed that you were crying for help, but no one answered. Not even him. You didn't want much. You just wanted a gesture, a sincere look. "How are you?" said with presence. But not even that came. And so you became accustomed to sleeping alone, even when accompanied, to waking in the middle of the night and pretending it didn't hurt, to convincing yourself that maybe the problem was you, but it never was. The problem was the emotional abandonment disguised as routine, the neglect hidden behind exhaustion, the indifference turned into normality. You held on strong, while everything inside you was imploding, and the cruelest part, he still thought everything was fine, because you didn't cry, because you didn't complain, because you did everything right. But doing everything right doesn't save someone who is dying inside. Do you realize that now? How many times did you rehearse conversations in your mind and swallowed all the words for fear of his reaction? How many times did you try to get close and received a "I'm tired" in response? How many times did you look at him and think, is there still a way back? You held the relationship with both hands, but it was only you holding on. He wasn't there anymore. You made plans, dreamed of trips, tried to maintain the bond, and he only existed on autopilot. His touch changed, his scent changed, the way he spoke to you changed. Before it was, "My love," then it became just, "Hey," and in the end, not even that. Silence. Do you understand? That silence hurt more than any scream, because it wasn't an absence of sound. It was an absence of presence. He wasn't there anymore, and you slept beside him, but woke up feeling farther away each time, as if the bed were a shared grave. The body was warm, but the bond was dead, and you kept trying to revive a heart that had already stopped beating. That's why it hurt so much. Because it wasn't just a bad relationship, it was a grief without a coffin. It was an ending you couldn't declare. Because he was still there, physically, but emotionally, he had long since left, and you stayed. You stayed out of fear, out of habit, out of hope. For old promises you still wanted to believe in, but deep down you already knew. You knew that something had been lost. You knew that love shouldn't be like this. You knew you were fading away, to keep a fire alive that only you were blowing on. And the cruelest part is that even so, you kept loving, loving with pain, loving with absence, loving with a loyalty he no longer noticed. Do you remember the last time he looked at you like he did in the beginning? The last time you both laughed genuinely together? The last time he listened to you without interrupting? Maybe it was years ago, and you got used to this distance, like someone accepting an incurable illness. But now you're realizing that you can't do this anymore. Because the soul can't withstand so much silence in solitude. Because the body gets sick when the soul rots from neglect. Because you weren't made to be a shadow beside someone. You were made to be a living presence. Loved, felt, respected. And that's not neediness, it's emotional dignity. If this touched you, comment below. I needed to hear this. Because you are not alone in this invisible pain. And if this text seems like it was written for you, it's because in a way it really was. But there's more. There are truths you still haven't had the courage to face. There are things he'll never admit, but you've already noticed. And there's a moment that will come, sir, when everything will break completely. It was just another morning, or so it seemed. The alarm went off. He turned to the side and hit the snooze button. You remained still, open eyes, exhausted soul, body present, but empty inside. It wasn't a fight that destroyed you, not a scandal, not a slap. It was the accumulation, the invisible, the constant. It was that good morning he didn't say. It was the kiss that never came. It was the cold touch, the distant gaze, the I'm in a hurry. Do you realize? What didn't happen killed you. What was missing killed you. And on that day, without warning, your soul simply rose. It got tired of waiting for him, tired of silently pleading, tired of sharing the same space with someone who no longer shared anything with you. And he never noticed. You got out of bed, made coffee, prepared things, and with the same motions as always, but inside you were a different woman, a woman who had already left, even while staying, a woman who looked at him and no longer saw love, only pity, only distance, only that grey emptiness that remains when everything ends. But no one says anything. You didn't cry. You didn't scream. You didn't throw anything in his face. You simply silenced, and in the silence something broke irreversibly. It was on that day that you realized you could no longer pretend. You were still there, but not for love, out of fear. Fear of starting over, fear of loneliness, fear of judgment, fear of disappointing those who still think you were the perfect couple, but you had been alone for a long time. It's just that now, you had realized this definitively. And what comes after that? A muted anger, a contained revolt, an immense desire to break free, but also an overwhelming guilt, because somehow you still felt wrong. Is it me who's exaggerating? Am I expecting too much? Does every relationship turn into this over time? But deep down, you knew the answer. It wasn't you, it wasn't neediness, it wasn't a phase. It was emotional disrespect, it was unspoken abandonment, it was physical presence without spiritual bond. It was him, acting as if you were an obligation, not a choice. And love, when it becomes a burden, rots. You noticed that over there that morning. While he was getting dressed, he picked up his phone and walked out, without even looking into your eyes. You were there, but you weren't anymore, because your soul had already packed everything up and left it at the door. Not physically yet, but emotionally, you were already on your way out. And that no one sees, no one posts, no one comments. It's the silent emotional death, the breakup without a shout, the goodbye that starts from within and takes a while to manifest on the outside. You became an expert at pretending. You pretended everything was fine in front of others. You pretended the silence was comfortable. You pretended that good night without a kiss didn't hurt. But everything hurt. It hurt what he didn't say. It hurt what he didn't ask. It hurt the way he treated you like part of the furniture, as if you were there out of obligation. He no longer saw your pain, your presence, your soul. And the cruelest part, you got used to it. But that day, something changed. It wasn't a grand turnaround. It was just the realization. You started to notice deeply, with clarity. You realized you deserved more. You deserved to be truly touched. You deserved to be looked at as a woman, as a soul, as life. And on that day, you didn't make a scene. You chose silence, a silence so full of presence that even the universe paused to listen. He did not. He kept going on autopilot, left the house, sent that lukewarm good morning over WhatsApp, and you replied with an emoji, just one, because that was all that was left for you. It was what he deserved. And in that moment, a new woman began to emerge within you. Still fragile, still confused, but already awakening. Do you recognize that? That woman is you, without fear. You, without dependency. You, without trying to save those who don't want to be saved. Because you tried everything. You molded yourself. You compromised. You even forgave things that no one should have to forgive. But it was never enough. Because those who don't want to see you will remain blind. And those who don't want to grow with you, Wendy, will drag you down. You're not exaggerating, you just realized. And when the soul realizes, there's no more chance to pretend. It might take weeks, months, but the end starts right there. In that moment when you wake up next to someone and feel like you're sleeping with a stranger. Or worse, sleeping with the ghost of a love that no longer exists. And when that moment arrives, there's no turning back. You will change. Even if everything around you remains the same for a while, you will change. Because the pain has shown you a truth. Staying in something that dims your light is worse than leaving. And sometimes leaving doesn't mean moving out. It means leaving from within. It's rescuing your soul from the room where it was trapped. It's giving voice to the silence that has been screaming at you for years. And on that day, that's what began. You didn't leave physically, but emotionally, you got out of bed. And he didn't even notice. Maybe he'll realize too late. Maybe he'll only notice when you've already moved on to another place, internal, deep, yours. But then it won't matter anymore, because now it's about you, about your healing, about what you will do with this realization, about who you will become when you stop begging for the love that should never have been absent. Have you ever been through this? Tell me in the comments. He lost you the day he thought he could stay silent, ignore you, treat you like you were just part of the routine, as if love were something that doesn't need nurturing. He lost you the day he thought you would stay there, forever. The same way, even with your soul slowly dying, you know which day that was. Maybe you don't remember the date, but you remember the feeling. It was the day you looked at him and felt nothing, neither love nor anger nor pain, nothing, just an old fatigue, a mature emptiness, a quiet certainty within your chest. That's when he lost you, but he didn't notice, because he confused your strength with weakness, your patience with resignation, your silence with submission. He never understood that the silence of a woman who loves is a delayed scream, a contained earthquake, a storm in formation, and you held on to this inside for far too long. You held on when he turned to the side and fell asleep. You held on when he treated you like just another obligation. You held on when he made you feel guilty for wanting attention, for asking for affection, for needing to be seen. You held on out of love, then out of fear, then out of habit, and in the end, for nothing. You held on until the day your hand got tired, and you let go without making a sound, without making a scene. You simply let go, and there, in that moment invisible to him, you left, not with bags, not with screams. You left from within. And that kind of departure is the most dangerous, because it has no return. It leaves no traces. It leaves the other person talking to themselves, trying to understand where everything fell apart. But it fell apart long ago. He was just too busy to notice. He lost you when he thought your presence was guaranteed, when he stopped caring, when he started treating your commitment as an obligation. He lost you when he stopped asking how you felt, when he stopped listening to you, when he left you alone in the midst of the relationship. Do you realize that now? Love didn't end suddenly, it was drowning in his absence. In the little things, on the days he didn't see you, in the moments he was there but wasn't truly present. He lost you when he stopped trying, but you stayed. You stayed for so long that even you began to believe that this was love. It was little, it was shallow, it was cold. But now you know, it wasn't love. It was attachment. It was fear. It was old hope dressed in unmet promises. You wanted it to work. You wanted to believe that he would change. You wanted to make every effort you put in worth it. But there comes a time when life demands that you see. And you saw. You realize that he never truly chose you. You realize that you became the woman who did everything and received nothing in return. You noticed that the love you gave came back broken, if it even came back at all. And now, you don't want it anymore. You don't want to fight alone anymore. You don't want to talk to someone who doesn't listen. You don't want to share a bed with someone who doesn't share their soul. You want peace, you want presence, you want reciprocity. You want to be loved without having to beg for it. And if that seems like too much, then it's because he was giving you too little. He lost you when he thought you would never recognize your own strength, when he thought he could keep neglecting you without any consequences, but now it's too late. Because what you feel today isn't anger, it's relief. Relief in finally recognizing yourself, in realizing that you weren't wrong for feeling so deeply. He was the one who was wrong for feeling so little, and if one day he wakes up, it will be too late, because you won't be there anymore. Not inside, not outside, not around. You will have gone to a place he cannot reach, the place where you found yourself again. And in that place, there's no room left for those who slowly destroyed you. No room for those who needed to lose you in order to value you. No room for those who confused your love with weakness. If this touched you, comment below, "I needed to hear this," and take a deep breath. Because your life begins now, in his absence, at the end of waiting. In the rebirth of the woman you always were, but had forgotten. And you can be sure of this, he lost you the day he thought you would never have the courage to leave. But you left. You left from within. And now, you are returning to yourself. And no one can take that away from you. This conversation doesn't end here. Come with me to the next video.